This episode is presented by Fidelity. Independence, it's your move. Fidelity's unbiased expertise helps you understand all your options. Fidelity works with many types of wealth managers, so you can select the business model that best fits your future. Their consultative approach helps you choose how much control you want and how much support you need. Everything on your terms. After all, isn't that why you want independence? Explore new possibilities for independence at i.fidelity.com/yourmove.
I was with my wife, like, hey, I really want to go build out this company. She was pregnant with our son. She's like, you get 1 year to get this thing going. And if you can't get it going, you're done. And I was like, fair. I was like, start the clock.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Advisor Upside Show. My name's Sean. I'm executive editor here at the Daily Upside, and I'm joined with John Maganero. He's our senior reporter, knows everything retirement. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Sean. How are you doing today?
Awesome. And we're really excited because we brought on a great guest for you today, Aaron Schumm, who, as you probably know, is founder and CEO of Vestwell. He gave us some really colorful background on how he formed the company, his thoughts on alts and 401ks, and just a bunch of trend stuff. John, what did you take away?
Yeah, it's a lot of great takeaways. I've personally been interviewing Aaron for the better part of a decade now, and it's been very cool to just see how his firm has grown and developed over time. I think he's got a real special leadership skill, good at storytelling as we get into, and he's had some interesting experiences as we talk about. He was once invited to speak at the Davos Economic Forum alongside his wife, which is a cool story that we heard. So without much ado, why don't we jump into the conversation? I think there's a lot that listeners will take out of it.
Sure, let's do it.
We're joined by Aaron Schumm, who's the founder and CEO of Vestwell. Listeners probably know, but if you don't, Vestwell is a financial technology company that powers workplace and individual savings programs. It acts as a digital engine behind the scenes, helping businesses, financial advisors, and state governments manage 401k plans, 529 college savings, and other types of financial accounts that are incredibly important to the typical American out there. So first of all, Aaron, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys. All is well.
Great. Yeah, we were just, it's a busy summer. We've been kind of talking about the World Cup here on these episodes. We're really enjoying the tournament. It sounds like you've had the chance to go to a couple games, so really great. Sean as well.
I don't know how we're getting any work done, frankly.
Yeah.
all this soccer going on.
A little weird today without any games.
Yeah, indeed. This is the first rest day we've had in several weeks. But the first thing I want to talk to you about, Aaron, is that, your firm not too long ago raised $385 million in Series E funding with Blue Owl Capital and Sixth Street Growth leading the charge amongst others. Back at the time, I think it was in February, you kind of put out this statement that, this fundraising and really all the work that you've done so far is dedicated to closing the, quote, $50 trillion savings gap in America. I wanted to ask you, how should our listeners understand that figure and what does it represent? $50 trillion, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Just to kind of state it in a simple fashion. So if you think of the savings landscape, right, and tax preferred savings. So the way we think about it, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, IRAs, 529 college, able disability, emergency savings, health savings, and the like. So in that realm of savings across the country, we've amassed, round numbers, about $50 trillion in savings. The challenge is half of the country has been left out of the conversation. So we have half of this population in this country has not yet endeavored on that savings journey. And that's really what persists a large part of the gap. Now that $50 trillion that's already been created, that's still short of where we need to be, right? People need to save more. We all know we need to do it. It's hard to do for a bunch of reasons, but it's about, hey, can we get people who are already saving on a better path to a better outcome later in life? And can we engage those who are not yet starting down that journey?
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about the tremendous wealth creation that's still left on the table. I mean, our economy has been very powerful, but there's even more that could be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and it's hard, right? This is what we've set out to do: is take on some of these hard challenges and get people engaged, and try to meet people in pockets where they otherwise didn't have the ability to engage. right? Think about like whether it's a small, mid-sized business, which we do a lot of, right? And we started the business focused on small, mid-sized businesses. We've now grown and we do a lot of mid to large businesses as well. But it's, hey, how do you meet those people that otherwise wouldn't have done that? How do you think about like gig workers, right? And their lack of savings or access to savings. How do you think about the future generations and saving for education or health needs or emergency needs and alike?
So maybe we'll break down Vestwell's business model a little bit and kind of some of that. I know there's quite a few areas that you kind of try and help the average American savers, but the business line includes direct advisor distributed 401k plans, workplace emergencies, state-backed IRAs, programs that seed early wealth for college savings, student debt, ABLE accounts for people that with disabilities. So a lot of different areas to think about. But when you're balancing investments into these different business lines, are there areas where you think Vestwell could be playing more, or how do you think about it as a kind of holistic strategy, and where are some opportunities for you as you move forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's a massive space. It's a complicated industry,
Sure.
right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to kind of thread this, but we think about our business, right? Is really we're an enabler. So we are channel partner enabled, right, and distributed. So we focus on those three channels. So um, financial service industries, right? Pick a cut, right? Could be a bank, a broker dealer, a credit union, an RIA, an asset manager, a TPA, anywhere in there that would engage with either a proprietor of a business or the C-suite of a business or someone that's going to make those decisions on the savings spectrum. The second channel we go through are payroll HCM providers, right? And enabling them, right? And you need payroll data, right? And the payroll connectivity because we're focused on pre-tax savings. So you have to get those dollars before they get taxed into a
Right.
savings vehicle.
Yeah.
And then the third channel we focus on are government-led programs. We started with state. We do about 45 different state level programs across the country. But now we've also kind of expanded. We're working with the Fed Treasury on some of their initiatives and what they're doing. We're also working at local municipal levels, like a 457. So think of like a district or a local city in their savings programs. So we're kind of like spanning the spectrum of how we think about engaging. And our business model, right, is equip those who want to engage in those various areas across the country, give them the solutions where it's their brand, it's their lead, it's they can choose the investments they want, really kind of have the flexibility about it. Our job is to provide the technology to make it seamless and easy and drive the cost to serve down so people can put ultimately have more money in their pockets on the back side of it. So there's a lot of ways to kind of shape that in between there, right? It sounds easy kind of saying it, but there's so much nuance that happens as within this space. It's like, hey, how do you equip those and really kind of drive that engagement that we all need?
Yeah, and I think the core of that strategy, right, Aaron, is the technology, making it easy, making it seamless for these organizations that are already resource strapped. Potentially, they have a lot of competing priorities. You have to make this stuff easy for them to really get buy-in. It's
Right.
probably
Absolutely. No, I mean, no one wants to think about this stuff, right? Everyone knows
yeah.
you need to do it. No one wants to put the time or energy into around it because it's complicated. It's confusing. It takes a lot of time. So it's like, hey, how do you just make this go and really set it up so people, you know, get the outcome they're looking for in the future, but don't have to deal with the pain up front to make that all happen.
You know what I think is funny slash interesting, Aaron, is that I'm sure a lot of people, like in my own personal life, Sean, and your personal life too, are probably touched by Vestwell in a sense, but I hope
Yeah.
it's not offensive to say they probably don't know who you guys are. And I think that's kind of by design, right? It's interesting.
Oh yeah, there's so many. I mean, there's times I'm on the train or subway, and I'll have like a Vestwell bag or something, and someone be like, "Hey, I use you guys," or so like all of those things when you're kind of out in the wild and you see it, it's kind of fun to see persist now. But yeah, most people don't know that they're actually using a Vestwell solution, and that's by design, right? We're not in the business of trying to create some giant brand around who Vestwell is, right? We want people to know who we are to a degree, right? Especially those in the industry, right? That's important. But we just want to be a trusted provider out there, and really kind of be at the forefront of how people are thinking about what is possible when you start to save for the future.
Sorry to keep steamrolling the conversation, Sean, but I
Yeah.
wanted to also look back at February, the press release and the discussions around the last fundraising round. I mean, you spoke about the importance of artificial intelligence for your firm and for the broader wealth management ecosystem. What are your thoughts about that? How are you investing in AI today? And I imagine it will be part of closing that second $50 trillion gap that we already talked about.
Yeah, we're at a point now where AI is kind of in everything we do, right? It's like there's not a day you're not touching AI in some capacity, right? And it varies by role, obviously, across the organization. But to get kind of talk through a little bit of the journey. It's probably about 3 years ago we started on kind of the AI journey, right? And we thought about it and said we looked at our data set and said, okay, the world's going to go there, right? We don't know how fast, but it's going to happen. So how do we make sure that we're set up for that future and what's going to happen? So if we started with the data architecture layer and restructured it all, and a lot of that was thinking about, okay, how are we going to do this? Whether it be, I think about broadly in two vectors, right? You have the internal, what I'll call like operations support service experience that can be augmented through AI, right? And what you're doing in that. And there's obviously in our space, there's a enormous amount of service and operational components that happen, whether it's you're in testing or just someone's like, hey, how do I get a loan or what do I need to do or those sort of things. And then the other side of it is really the growth unlock, right? And thinking about how do you activate and engage via the channel partners we're working with to have their constituent base start to leverage Vestwell in an optimal way. So now within there, then you can just start to layer in all the different use cases of what would happen day to day, right? So we do, everything from voice AI, you're right. When you call in, you can talk to an agent and engage in that way. But it will also kind of quickly deflect to a human if it doesn't, if it knows like, hey, this isn't something I'm going to solve, right? Maybe it's some like nuanced plan design question or something like that. But we do about, over 90% of our inbound inquiries today don't actually have to ever go to a human anymore, right?
Wow.
Which helps pretty significantly. And again, that can be voice, it can be text, it can be email. There's a lot of ways to do it. But this is a business, so where there's always has to be humans in the loop, right? We listen to the recordings, we're constantly educating our AI models around like what this looks like, what this means, how to respond, how to react. Voice is a really interesting one, right? When you're talking, and now we're building out avatars, so you're kind of like communicating like on Zoom or like we are here, right? And seeing the interaction there. And then one of the cool things that I'm probably most excited about is we are about to roll out our the next best dollar engine around it. Currently, it's, we're calling it Luma. I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but what we have now is a solution where we can put in the hands of a saver. And now that we have all of these savings programs built on one stack, one architecture, they can actually start to get guidance and talk through where they should save that next dollar out of their paycheck. So if I have $50 or $100 or whatever the dollar is coming out of my paycheck, where should it go? Should it go to my 401k? Maybe, right? Maybe it should go to my kid's 529, right? Or I have a family member with a disability. Maybe it should go to their disability account. So starting to think through those permutations of where you can best optimize for that individual around all the data sets we already have on them, right? Because we know where they live, we know their tax rates, we know how they get paid, when they get paid. Like, there's a lot of things that we have around them that we can help. Now, we're not forcing them down a path by any means, right? But it's like, hey, this is what you should be thinking about. And what do you want to do, right? And then you can build out, additional solutions and education and financial literacy and wellness solutions around that.
Yeah, very cool.
So it's like the next best action, but the next best action for where you want to put your dollars. Obviously, suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And the critical thing here, right? And this is where I think historically financial wellness solutions had broken down was it gave you a lot of good ideas, but it couldn't do it for you. Right? It said, hey, here's everything you should do. Go figure out how to implement it, right? I think the unique spot we're in is we're doing all of this, right? So if someone says, yes, go do that, we can actually take the action and make it happen, right? It's not like they have to go, go find another solution, go log in somewhere else, do it. It's already sitting in front of them. So
Yeah.
that's a unique spot to be in, and then just really get people engaged. And then what we do is we share. We're kind of a different than I think a lot of people in the industry and historically. And I think we've been at the forefront of kind of changing that mindset. But we give all the data back to our partners. Right. So we put it back in the hands of the advisors or whoever we're working with, and they'll say, hey, here's everything that's happening. Right. And we allow them to drill down. We can, give them any report, any extract they want real time. So they have a real look into these things, and then they can be super additive and helpful to the conversation instead of just leaving it to the devices of the individual who's on that journey.
That's super interesting. Yeah. I mean, the data layers that you have, you can put it together. It's almost like robo advice 2.0, where you can have this really super personalized data to each individual client, where then you can act on some of their needs and pressing kind of things. Cause you're right. When you have these personal finance, like, oh, so put in your emergency account, save for this. Like, well, I have the mortgage or I have rent and I have, student loans. So how do you do that in the appropriate way to come out with the best options? But I think I want to just change gears really quick, Aaron, because I wanted to talk, while we have you, I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about private assets coming into 401ks. Thought it would be great to get your take on it. We've seen so much about it in the proposals and the regulations. There's always two sides to every kind of argument. I do think to what we're talking about before, it's going to open up new possibilities for average Americans in the private markets that they haven't had before. They have long time horizons. They can take advantage of that liquidity premium. So I think in a lot of ways it makes sense. Other folks thinks there's some complexity and some fees and some X, Y, and Z that could not benefit. So love to have your take on it. Just overall, I think you said that's such an interesting, perch on all of this.
I find it super personally interesting, right? Because, sitting where I am, obviously someone who's raised a lot of private capital, attuned to the private markets. Like I'm always, looking at, private assets out there and if something is available. Now, for the average individual, it can be complicated, right? And so I don't think it's for everyone. But there is a subset of the user base. Like if you almost think of it like, if you think of like the sleeve of self-directed brokerage, right, within a 401k plan, that's not for everyone, right? But there are people who, sure, they know what they're doing. They want it. They have a specific viewpoint, and they want to go invest in that. So I think it should be an option available. I think broadly it just becomes part of an asset, diversification strategy where you just have a sleeve or an allocation associated with it all. Now, the cost of those should come down over time. Now, it is hard, and I understand why the fees are expensive, because administering these things, at a fund level, or like have an SPV or however it's put together for that, can get expensive to maintain. So I understand the fees, but if we can drive the fees down a bit by creating mass market adoption, I do think there's a place for it. And it'll just become like anything else we do, right? Private markets are becoming more accessible to the public every day. So it'll just be incorporated in how we think about the overall broad asset allocation for savings.
Someone told me that I thought it was an interesting point that they said advisors don't have to keep 100% of their clients' assets 100% liquid 100% of the time. So there are areas to get this illiquidity premium that you can find in the private markets. And you're right, it's probably not for everyone, but I think it's an interesting new area and definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, and if you can make it where, let's say you leave your company, right, and this is in a 401k, right, using this example, and you go somewhere else, you need to be able to roll that asset, right, without having to liquidate it or get into a tricky situation where that asset is not portable. So if it can get wrapped in a CIT or 40 Act product or something that can become portable wherever that individual goes, and you just carry it with you, I think that really becomes powerful, and people get more and more comfortable over time with it.
Sean, maybe I could close this segment with a
That was
question.
good.
So just very quickly, Aaron, like I thought it was cool to see some months ago in May, Vestwell sort of in bed with QuickBooks, which, QuickBooks is a very, broadly used solution amongst, small and mid-sized businesses. Folks can go and read about that on the website. But what I wanted to ask you is, as a person who's involved in creating a lot of partnerships and bringing, organizations together and connecting them with Vestwell, do you have any tips for our listeners who may be kind of getting involved in that work? Like, what does it take to bring two organizations like that together, and what are How do you make sure it goes well? Big question, but what comes immediately to mind?
It takes an enormous amount of patience and navigating. I mean, a lot. It's hard, right? I mean, I've been doing what I would classify as like enterprise partnerships and sales, my whole career. Um, it is a very complicated, uh, daunting process, right? There's some of these things take years and years to mature and get to where you want. Um, the QuickBooks one, they've been fantastic to partner with, I have to say. Like, so, it was a bit of a new endeavor, right? When we acquired the Accrue book, and brought that on, and how we thought about focusing on the payroll channel space. And we had done it to an extent, but not to the extent that Guideline slash Accrue had done. So there was a lot of like learnings from our standpoint of like, what should we do? How do we think about standing this up? It's been great to work with the QuickBooks team and the Intuit, family on the whole, and kind of how we think about where they want to play. A lot of it is it's learning, right? It's a lot of A/B testing, getting entrenched. I would say just broadly though, doing enterprise sales, like, you have to really be prepared for arduous procurement processes. Like the level of detail and scrutiny that you are put through, you really need to be buttoned up with how you do that. Now, I built another company that did something similar. So, from the onset of Vestwell, we had already, put that as part of our core kind of foundation of how we approach, right? Especially we do all the government programs. I mean, the level of diligence around those is astounding. So just doing that, and then you really have to understand their viewpoint versus what you bring to the table,
Yeah.
right? And it's one thing you can always share, like, hey, yeah, we do all these things. Who cares, right? It's more, what do they care about and why? And then mapping that back into your world as a business provider and say, okay, how does their viewpoint and where they want to be and what's important to them, and whether it's strategics, whether it's, just earnings growth or so on, and then being able to tie that directly into, delivering your platform and your solution to drive that value for them. And it changes, right? You may get a new leader who's now owning that relationship on their side. They may have a different viewpoint. They may bring in a whole new team. Like, all that stuff happens, and you just have to be prepared for it and ready to align and say, okay, let's go do it. And then, and I think really be honest with each other, because it's hard. This stuff doesn't go perfect. It's a learning thing. I mean, we're iterating, our platform constantly. We do, sometimes 15 plus 20 releases a day, right? To navigate through some of these things. And sometimes, they're not all massive releases, right? But you have little dials you're turning. You're like, oh, the verbiage on this screen didn't quite land because we see people getting hung up here. How do we change that? Or we got to move this around. So that it's just really kind of being patient and understanding, like, your product may not out of the box resonate with exactly what their viewpoint is. So being able to kind of meet somewhere along that way is super important.
Yeah, well, that's great insight, Aaron. Sean, what do you think? Should we kick it to the next segment? This was great.
Let's do it. Thanks, Aaron. This episode is presented by Fidelity. Growth, it's fundamental. And wealth management firms of all types are proven to grow faster with Fidelity. Because we'll work closely with you to help make your vision come to life. Deep expertise, powerful technology, and unmatched scale, we have everything you need all in one place to help your firm grow. Move forward faster with Fidelity. Visit i.fidelity.com/growth. We're joined once again by Aaron Schumm, CEO at Vestwell. And in this segment, we're going to run through a series of what we think is going to be fun, quick fire questions that's going to help us get to know Aaron a little bit more, while also sharing some lessons that he has for listeners over his career. So let's try and spend 1 minute or less if we can on these. We won't hold you to that, but we're trying to get as many in as we can, because I think we want to have a little bit of fun with this one. So the first question, what was the most shocking moment of your career? Either good or bad, just what was the one that was like, wow.
Oh.
And I put you on the spot right away there.
Yeah. There's been many times where I think the most shocking, this is more personal. It's like I've walked into a room and I'm like, and you look around the room and there's a lot of, people that I admire, or, or just, you're just like kind of wowed by, right? and I'm sitting in that room, and it could be, a small room with like, a handful of people to a larger room. Um, and I've been personally kind of shocked of like, oh, wow, like, this is the room I'm in right now, do I don't think I belong here, and that's happened a lot of times, you get, I guess, you get a little bit more used to it over time, but there are still a lot of rooms I walked into, I'm like, "Huh, this is where I am now, like, this is interesting,"
Yeah.
and then I'll give you one example. It was a CEO summit, and it was a lot of, super high powered people like from the Jamie Dimons of the world to, pick a name, right? And in this room. And I thought it was the coolest thing, right? You're sitting, uh you're next to these folks, and you're just like, wow, this, and it's just, casual conversation and so on. And I walked home. I remember I got home and was super excited, right? And then and then I walked in the door and I was like excited, like, talk to the family, like, hey, this is a cool day. And then my son was like incredibly sick, right? And it turned into like immediate, take him to the hospital.
Oh,
And
geez.
then it's
Oh
just
wow.
like, but then it's just like, but that's his life, right? Like you don't even get to enjoy those moments. You're just like,
Yeah.
okay, that was probably the coolest professional experience I've had, most interesting to me. And that doesn't matter. Back to the family life.
Yeah,
The gears
That's
shift
that's
quickly.
that's kid life. Yeah, you never know
for
when you'll be in
sure.
the ER or the
Yeah.
urgent
Like,
Yeah.
care.
Dad, your life doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. I get it.
I love that. I love that, Aaron. Next question. What is one big risk you've taken in your career? And what was the payoff?
I think, starting Vestwell was a massive risk, right? Where I was just like, hey, I want to go do this thing. We had just exited our last company, Folio Dynamics, and sold that business. Um, and I remember I was with my wife. We took a 6-day vacation. It's rare for us to vacation. And we're sitting there, I'm like, hey, I really want to go do this savings thing. I want to go build out this company, right? Uh and she was like, "Ah," like, she was just like, "Just stop, like, take some time, relax." And I'm like, I will," but I'm like, I just wanna do this. I'm like, I think I can do this. I know how to do it. I know other people are gonna try to go after the space. And they're smart people. I just don't agree with the viewpoint by which they're gonna approach it. I'm like, I think I got the right way to approach it. I wanna go change this, and it's gonna be a better society, better this country and everything, going forward. And it just had a huge positive impact, I think, on society. So I was like, I want to go do this. And, my wife, she was pregnant with our son, who's now 9, going on 10. And she's just like, okay. She's like, you get 1 year to get this thing going. And if you can't get it going, you're done. And you gotta, rethink your life. And I was like, fair. I was like, start the clock. I'll take that bet and go. And literally that was it. And then we were off to the races. And then, you know, probably a couple months later founded the business, funded the business, and here we are today. But that was,
Yep.
when we were obviously younger than we are today. You got a first kid on the way, which is a whole new parenting experience. My wife has a high power job, and she's running around like crazy in her career. And it's like, hey, I'm just going to go do this, start another company and throw our life into chaos amidst
Mhm.
all the other chaos coming. That to me was a big risk. And I was just like, it's just got to work. Like there's
Yep.
no other option. You're going to make it work, hell or high water. And thankfully it has, and it's been awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thanks
Love
for
it.
the behind the scenes there. That was great. We appreciate it. Next one. What's one thing you used to have to do at work that you most look forward to never having to do again?
I mean, I still do a lot. Even, 10 years into this thing. I mean, there are things I didn't like doing. Was like putting together the furniture for the office, right? It's, for the team coming in, I would mop the floors, clean the bathrooms. Like it didn't matter, right? It was like, you do it all.
Right.
And I don't miss doing that. Like I still, have to do that at home, but at least professionally, I don't.
I had to clean bathrooms in my first job, and I do not miss that. Not at
Yeah, it's
all.
just like you just do it, right? You do whatever it takes, right? Now we still have now we have obviously a bigger team, but and a lot more support in doing these things. But like I still get involved in a lot of the nitty-gritty. It's just like some of the little I would say non-essential core aspects of the business, like or aspects of the business that are not core to the business, like that are sitting there that employees want. then thankfully we have other people to help manage that stuff now.
Yeah. All right. Next one, firing right along here. Would you say you've ever made a mistake in your career?
Oh, every day. I mean, it's like every day I make mistakes. Like there's
Yeah.
something, right? Thankfully I don't think anyone's been too big or too expensive or too detrimental to our business. But there's always little mistakes you make, or like, you make a bet on something, you're like, oh, let's do this, or you bet on a person to do something and they can't deliver on it. I think a lot of it's just recognizing it. And you know, eh, I would say one thing you have to do is it's hard for me, and I'll explain, like, because building these businesses from the ground up and like where you are and everything you're doing and how passionate I am about the business, it is hard at times to draw a separation between your personal life and work. Like they are tied together regardless. Um, and that is difficult, because obviously there's an emotional aspect that gets tied to work in that regard, and I had to be conscious of, like, walling that off
Mhm.
and not being tied to it in that regard, and be like, "It is just business," regardless of,
Yeah.
say it's an employee you wanna do something with, or, like, you're betting on for something, and they're just not doing it, and you kinda just have to, like, "Sorry, it's not working," and move on. Even
Yeah.
though you may really value that individual as a human, but you're just like, it's just not working. So those sort of things, like some of the mistakes, like sometimes you hang on to people too long, or you tell people, hey, this person is really got to move on from the company, and I probably am not as forceful enough about taking action against it as I should have been. There's times you're like, oh, we should have done that earlier, right? Because now we're in such a better spot, for whatever reasons of how we reshape that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt that before, not on the level that you have, but yeah, sometimes having the hard conversations is really tough, but really, really important to have them, quickly. But how do we do a fun one then? What's your best investment you ever made? Whether it's time, money, effort, personal life, anything you want to do.
I mean, the easy one is like, yes, investing in the family, but
Yeah.
that's, you do that, right? Regardless, hopefully. I think just betting on myself and investing in myself to like make it happen. Invest well, right? This will be, best outcome, right? Personally, professionally, I've had. And it's fun to just, it took a lot of work to distill this business to be like, I thought through all the angles of like, how does every single person in the equation win? Right? And there's no losers, right? And build a successful, business out of that, which is fun, right? And that's what kind of drives me is like everyone wins. Doesn't matter who's coming in where to the platform to Vestwell to engage with us and if they're all benefiting, we benefit, and our investment is that much better on ourselves for doing so. So that's kind of how I think about it. Is like it can kind of just keep growing and getting better if we're thinking about it the right way, in the right spirit for everyone around us.
What's one thing you're overpaying for, and maybe what's one thing that's worth every penny? I'll start. I'm overpaying for subscriptions on my television.
Yeah. Oh God, there's so many things. One thing I would say I consistently overpay for that I am happy to do so is for service. So when people are doing so, even like at a restaurant or whatever, I have no problem paying for great service. I mean, as a person who formerly bussed tables and worked at a bar, like I've been on that side. I get it. Like it's tough, right? And I have no problem helping and probably over contributing to some of those things. Some people are like, oh, I can't believe you're gonna tip, for that. I'm like, yeah, you know what though? But like I want to help, right? I like regardless, like maybe somebody had a shitty day or whatever it is, right? Like I get it. Like it's life. So that's probably something that I'm okay. And I kind of believe in like it'll all, benefit, everyone in some form of fashion. And, so like I'm okay with that. So I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a generic answer, but that's how I think
No,
about it.
it's great.
Oh,
That's
that
great
makes
insight.
sense.
I
My
agree.
my family is in the restaurant business too, so I've been around it a lot too. And yeah, I mean, it's their livelihoods a lot of times, just those tips. And
We service a lot of restaurants, right? And we're the 401k platform behind Toast, right? So if you think of like all their food
yeah,
and beverage
yeah,
clients.
yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one time in the city, like running, grabbing a sandwich, and just there's a woman who was cooking, and her kid was there. Who was probably about my son's age, sick as could be, couldn't go to school, but she had to work, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, the kid's sitting there just like laying on the couch. And I was like, God, I'm like, you feel for him. Like she
Yeah.
didn't have the option to take the day off of work. Right.
Right.
So that's one of those things where I'm like, hey, I want to help out as much as possible and do whatever I can. And like, I remember I gave her a bunch of money and it was just like, hey, if you can get out of here for the day, like go take
Yeah.
care of your kid and go
Yeah,
home,
that's awesome. Yeah, it happens out. Yeah, that's awesome. I would say mine is not on that level, Aaron, but New York Times crossword puzzle. I pay for like the crossword, all of it, the Sudoku, like all those little games they have, and but it's well worth it. All right, last one, Aaron. What's your retirement dream after Vestwell is over? When you can finally disconnect, take some time off. What are you looking to do?
Oh, I've been asked this a lot. Honestly, I would just like to slow it down a bit. Like the pace I go is not tenable.
Yeah.
And that part's hard, right? Where you're just constantly, running from plane to plane or whatever and balancing it all. Um, I'd like I'd like to pick my kids up from school more. I think
Yeah.
like little things like that, right? But there's like like for my life and like what I do day to day, I there's nothing I would change drastically. Like,
Okay.
maybe play a little bit more golf here and there and or just, but I've been fortunate but yeah, I think just having a little bit more time where it's like you just I think my dream would be I'm pulled in so many directions at once
Yeah.
and there's no off button. Like my phone never goes off. It does, there's never like a day off. I can't tell you a vacation I've ever had where I'm not on the phone for, 75 plus percent of it. Right.
Yeah.
And like, it's just that sort of thing. I would just like, okay, if I could just shut it off for a day and not have to deal with whatever crisis of the moment is happening, that would be
Yeah.
nice.
I know I'm sure it's a lot of sacrifice, but it's been incredible what you've done so far. So thanks for opening up for us a little bit here. I guess we're on this segment here, John. What do you think?
Let's do it. Aaron, I think it's fair to say that you do a lot of public speaking. You appear at industry events. You're frequently quoted in the financial media. You even had the chance to present to world leaders at the Davos Economic Forum a couple of years back. What was that experience like? What did you talk about? And was it kind of surreal being at an event like that?
Um, it is surreal, right? I've been to Davos a couple times, right? So, you get a little accustomed to it, but it is interesting though, because you'll walk down the street and, you know, bump into people that you're just like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, there's a couple, I mean, at one time I was running between buildings and like, um, yeah, I don't want to say names of these people, but you bump into some people. That
Folks, so you'll see on the front page of the nuppaper.
Yeah, absolutely. That are like
yeah.
far more important than me by like
Yeah.
exponential, amounts. So, those things one of them, Alex, so there was a president of Ukraine, right, and running, and it was just like. I was just like, oh God, like we're standing next to each other and his security guards are not thrilled with that, but it was fully accidental. It was just, we just happened to be crossing, we were going, but, so the Davos speaking thing was, for me, it was a highlight in many ways. Davos, that's always interesting. I think one of the more interesting things for me personally was, my wife and I did it together. And it was the first time we had ever been on stage together and spoken, and no one knew we were married. And so that was an interesting kind of dynamic, right? And I would say, what we talked about was the intersection of health and wealth, right? She's in life sciences and focused on multi-generational outcomes and generational health. And we talked about how really kind of your health and generational health really dovetails into your financial health, right? And how you think about persisting through life. And as we're living longer, what should people be thinking about and your kids and everything like that. So, so that was an interesting highlight for me. I remember talking to someone, I'm not going to say who, but a very high powered CEO and she was like, oh, that was great. Whatever. I was like, oh yeah. And this is my wife's hands. And she's like, wait, you two are married? I was like, yes. She's like, no way. So those are
cool.
kind of fun, situations, but,
I love it.
I think probably the most interesting, I think another personal one that I would put at the highlight, was this past spring. I did the convocation speech for my undergraduate school at University of Illinois,
Cool.
uh, and that was for me a unique one, right? Just to be at a a place you're tied to, right? And you have all those big memories of undergrad, um, and then just the audience, and it was a personal speech, but that was definitely a a more difficult speech for me to give, I would say in general than the typical kind of talk track
Yeah.
you do for work.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Just thinking back maybe to earlier in your career, when did you realize that communicating the vision sort of Vestwell was just as important maybe as building that product? And as you got on stage and things, was it something you learned or something you always kind of felt comfortable with? Or
Um, I am not like now I'm comfortable public speaking. I was never
yeah,
a comfortable public speaker, right? I remember early in my career speaking at like industry roundtables and just like my heart like pumping out of my chest, right?
yeah,
And thinking like, oh gosh, um, I think for me it was always difficult because I don't like to to just talk, right, without, like, conversation. So giving speeches for me is not natural, right? I just want it to be conversational. Like, let's talk as people, right? So when it's just me and it's a one-way conversation, I find that uncomfortable, and I still do, right? So I have to, like, constantly in my head kinda tell myself, "Hey," you're like, "Do these people care about this? Like, does this resonate?" Whatever. So I think the story, though, when having like raising capital or telling the story of Vestwell, it's always evolved, right? Partially because obviously the business has evolved, but just you just try to understand how people are thinking about it, what they're taking away from it. Are they getting confused? Do they get it? Our business is super complicated. Like the story I will, you know, e- engage with on a let's say an investor is much more high level, to some degree on the business aspect than you are with like a financial advisor who lives in the space that gets it, right?
right.
So you just really have to know your audience and reshape the dialogue based on who the audience actually is.
Yeah. Do you feel, Aaron, and I do, I could speak personally from this, that public speaking, the ability to sort of get through those initial periods of discomfort, the early speeches, your heart's pounding, it's challenging, but getting through that, I imagine, has had a very positive effect on your career. I mean, Sean and I, we both moderate a lot, and we've talked about this, Sean. It can be nerve wracking at first to get up on stage, but I think it's worth pushing through. Aaron, you probably agree with that, right? You do get more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely get comfortable. You get yes, you get used to it, especially like as you get more comfortable with your talk track and what you're engaging around, it just becomes more, uh, I don't know, it's almost like reflexive versus just like really having to like think through it. Now, I I don't know. There are certain people I think they're incredible public speakers. I don't think I'm an incredible public speaker. I think I can tell a story though that relates with people, and I think that's important, right? When you want people to, like really get it, it's like for me, I don't like to go out there and just be like to give the grandiose speech and hand waving. It's like no, like we're gonna talk. I'm gonna talk to you as a person. Like I'm a person. We're all kind of on the same mission here. We're all trying to do the same thing. Like let's just align and connect on that level. And I feel like for me, that like drops the anxiety level around it. Right? It's like no, we're just talking. Right? It's just a conversation. We're gonna figure out as humans, as partners, and do the right thing. But yeah, I think you got to be out there and kind of do that and get comfortable with those conversations.
Yeah, I figured that when I first did my first like moderator panel, I knew I had to do it and break through that to kind of just in media these days, you have to kind of be all kind of multimedia and on stage and on podcasts. But I didn't sleep for like a week and a half. I'm not gonna lie. Like I didn't
Yeah.
sleep
Yeah.
right. Like it was not a fun experience at all. But it definitely paid off. And I would imagine, I mean, we just have to ask the questions, but I think it's always harder, especially when I go on as a panelist, to actually have some smart things. And like I have that same thing, like, why are people listening to me right now? Like I'm just a journalist, whatever. But so I feel like it's harder for you all. But how do you prepare for those? Are you someone that wants to get super like line up, outline, run through it, or you kind of more just want to keep that personal vibe or somewhere in between?
I am. It is rare that I will prep any notes or look at
Mhm.
them. Now, I don't know if I would recommend that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was gonna say.
but it's just me, and I think it's more around. For me, it's a lot of. I think a lot about just like be your authentic self, right? And I don't need a script. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be the most eloquent human being out there by any means. But I'm going to be me, and you're going to get the real me. And I'm going to tell you kind of how I'm thinking about it. Right. And I have opinions. And again, it may not be the most articulate rendition of that. But I think it's important to do that. There's very rare that I will prep the points around it. Like if there's data, I will look at data points, right? Or like there's percentages or numbers or things like that I want to convey. I want to make sure those are accurate. But if it's just like, hey, what's your view? What do you think about this or whatever? That it's usually just off the cuff. The only one I really did prep for significantly was the convocation speech I gave, because it was wildly new for me.
Yeah.
And it did have to be scripted because there are people that were, signing it and, doing sign language alongside. So there had to be prep around it. But that was probably the only speech in my life I've ever scripted to that extent.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Well, Aaron, maybe we'll wrap up the conversation there. I kind of wanted to ask if you had any sort of horror stories from being up on stage, but I feel like that's kind of a cruel place to leave a podcast, especially when we're trying to encourage people to get involved. So unless anything jumps immediately to mind, maybe we'll
Yeah,
leave
no,
it there.
thankfully, I don't have any real horror stories, right? There's times I've been up there where you just, I think probably the worst thing, which isn't that bad, because honestly, I don't think anyone ever notices, but like you can forget your train of thought or something, like, as you're
Yeah. Oh,
going, and
it's happened to me for
right, that
sure.
I think it happens to everyone, right?
Yep.
But there's nothing good, thankfully I haven't like fallen on my face or,
Yeah.
Yep.
something that's wildly embarrassing while I'm on stage.
Yeah, the most part, the audience wants you to feel comfortable and succeed, so it's always like, you have this fear, like, what if this happens? And they laugh, like, they're not going to laugh. They want to have fun. They want to be engaged. So that's always
Yeah, for me,
helpful.
it's also like, I want to feel like, are they connected to you? Like, do they get it?
Yeah.
I'll do like, even when we do our all hands or town halls at work, right? Because our company's gotten big. There's a lot of people I personally don't know anymore, right? So I'm just kind of like looking around the room or on Zoom or wherever we are, and I'm just like, these people, like, does this person get it? Are they like, does this mean anything? Are they connected, or are they just like just gonna nod their head and regardless of what you say? So it's always like being able to pull those little nuggets out where you can be like, okay, yes, this person gets it is really important for me.
Aaron, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of your personal experience.
I just want to say I learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners did too. We appreciate Aaron and look forward to having you on again.
No, thanks. I appreciate it, guys. It's good to see you as always.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Advisor Upside Show. We just want to remind you, do a little housekeeping, please. If you haven't already, subscribe, send us emails. The podcast is everywhere you can find your podcast. So please be sure to reach out. Let us know what you think. John, anything else you want to add about the show?
Yeah, we're coming at you on YouTube as well. So if you'd like to see the podcast, to head over to that platform. Please keep your suggestions for guests and topics coming. We really like to to receive the feedback from the audience. You can reach us directly by emailing podcast@thedailyupside.com. Again, that's podcast@thedailyupside.com, where all of your messages are greatly received. With that, we'd also just suggest that folks subscribe to our newsletters. We have the flagship Daily Upside. We're proud to say we've got over 1 million subscribers to that publication. And then we've got the business to business newsletter, so to speak, which includes the retirement upside, the advisor upside, and the ETF upside. Together, it's a really holistic and timely coverage of the wealth management industry. We like to think that if you subscribe to all of them, you'll really be kept up to date and hopefully entertained a little bit as well. So we'll be back at you next week with another episode. So Sean, we'll talk soon. Have a good one.
Take care, everybody.